how they can see more clearly, not just in sport, but beyond that.
The most important thing as humans that we really strive for and thrive is having connection and having community. Every year is a new journey. It's a new story. It's a new opportunity to connect with young people. Up to 79% of communication is nonverbal, right? Joy, bored. Am I angry or am I serious? There's two opportunities in every conversation. You're either giving energy or you're taking energy away. As a leader, being aware of the energy that we give others, and is it the right energy at the right time, and checking yourself on that energy. So that's one little way of being in the moment with other people.
Today, I am joined by TJ Kostecky, a friend, a longtime college soccer coach, and as you'll hear more, a leadership educator, author of Eyes Up, many, many more. TJ is currently head coach at Bard College, where his work extends beyond the field and into leadership development. And he spent decades helping athletes and teams think differently about awareness, vision, performance. I have a personal relationship with TJ that spans over a decade myself. I'm excited to talk to him not only about coaching, but also about how people learn and how they can see more clearly, not just in sport, but beyond that, and how they can grow as in their own self, and then in their relationship with others. So I thought TJ asked before we go into talking about Eyes Up and current work you're doing, I'd love to start with your own journey and your path early on, and how you became a soccer coach, and now the broader mission of vision, awareness, and leadership. So if you wouldn't mind, give the audience a little overview on yourself.
Sure, thank you. Just a brief overview. My plan was never to be a soccer coach. First went to college in a small school in Virginia on a half soccer scholarship, and I was going to be a dentist. My dad was Eastern European from Ukraine, and he was in the medical field. So they call ethnic pressure they put on their children, the Eastern Europeans: doctor, dentist, lawyer, engineer, or failure. So I selected 5. Well, my dad didn't actually say I was a failure, but I was never cut out to be a dentist. So chemistry is the way I tried to do it, and I worked really hard at it, but it didn't work out. So I had to pivot. So I ended up pivoting from that area to education. And why? When I was 15 years old, I was always tall for my age. I was a counselor at a sports camp up here, actually in the Catskills, which is ironic, full circle how the universe brings you places. That's literally an hour from here. And I was teaching sports, basketball, ironically, to older 16, 17-year-olds that never played or a little bit. And I felt a real satisfaction in my heart that they improved and that they had so much fun doing it. So that felt really good in my heart. So I said, let me pursue education. And then that was the start of my journey to get an undergraduate and a graduate degree in education.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Poking it a little bit, you've been coaching, for decades across multiple universities. What is it about coaching that drew you in and keeps you wanting to remain involved in coaching sport?
Connection. The most important thing as humans that we really strive for and thrive is having connection and having community. And you're familiar with the blue zones, the research studies of folks around the world that live the longest, right? Whether it's in the Mediterranean or in Japan, the consistent factor is not food or weather or exercise, which are all important in terms of longevity and joy, but it's having a community, having people that you could connect with and rely on and trust and believe in. And this is my 39th year. This will be my 40th year of coaching coming up next year. I know I look really young. How does this 40-year-old now? My 40th year coaching, and every year is a new journey. It's a new story. It's a new opportunity to connect with young people that are finding their journey. Between 18 and 22 is a pivotal part in our lives. So I really enjoy helping them navigate that space.
Yeah. When did you realize, or did you always know that it was more than just coaching? You said basketball you did, or soccer for decades, that you knew it was more than, just, and not to say it's someone that's a small thing. Coaching a single sport's a huge thing, but that your guidance, your instruction, your coaching was beyond the sport itself, that it involved broader things, that are sport related, like perception in decision making. But when did that change? When was there a change there?
That's a great question. I don't remember like the exact date that it changed because I think it happened over time, certainly, but I will share with you some moments that highlighted the impact that I had and that we have, those that are in the coaching and teaching profession, because we all have this impact. Everyone that's any coach or teacher that's listening to this, or mentor or parent, this is the impact we have on others. Probably 5 years ago, I get a message on Facebook, and it said, Coach, nice to see that you're on Facebook. I don't know, you probably don't remember me, but you had coached me back in 1987 on the Olympic development team in New Jersey. And on that team was one of the U.S.'s best players, Claudio Reyna, whose son Gio Reyna is now in contention to be on the national team, who's in Germany. Anyway, but I was a 14-year-old and I had a really good game. And I remember you took me out and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what did I say? Like destroyed his life. You said, he writes, you took me out and you told me I could do better. I'll always remember how you said it because I've used the same language with both of my sons and all the employees in my company. So when I got that message, and when I realized, Barry, I wasn't like, oh, what a good guy I am. I thought about, when did I not use the right word? When did I not look at someone and said, I could see you doing this and I believe in you and I see that you can be successful, you can do better. That's what I thought about. The power of my words or my actions have influenced him over his whole entire life. That's when it became for me an aha moment that I and everyone in this profession is impacting people in such a way that we are not even aware.
I think that's really fascinating. 'Cause you're right. When I think of like great, coaching is being an educator, and you're certainly, the top of the field for someone who has, this mindset of respect for the learner, for the athlete or individual in life. And so it really changed. I'm curious, and there's a little bit of a tangent from what I thought, advice to other coaches, because I do wonder, like for you, and I said I've known you, maybe it's relatively short within our lifespan. I've known you, I don't know, 10, 15 years ish, but I'm wondering, it feels like you've been this perceptive way since I've known you. And I'm just curious, is it something, is it like, yeah, you were always, when you were 11 years old, you were like this, or is it, how do you view and how, and then if you wouldn't mind partly into like how someone who might not have the skill yet. Yeah.
Sure. Great question, by the way. And thank you for those kind words that you shared about my journey. Appreciate you sharing that. What happened? I had a tragic event when I was 12 years old, and I talk about it in Eyes Up in my book. A friend and I were building a fort, and we were building some steps on a tree, a little wood, and he was hammering the wood to have a place that we could step up and climb the tree. And I was standing behind him, and a piece of the head of the nail broke off and hit me in the eye and cut my eye, which was very difficult and painful. So I was on the verge of losing my entire vision, and I'm thankful that I have some vision in my eye. When that happened at 12 years old, and all of a sudden I was looking at the world like this with one eye. So what I started to notice is little things that I never noticed with two eyes, Barry. So for example, being in the emergency room, and when the doctors and the nurses came in, their body language. When I was transferred to a specialist hospital, they were going to take my eye out in the emergency room, not in the emergency room, in the hospital in New Jersey. They were like, we can't save your eye. My dad drove me to New York, Manhattan Eye and Ear, which is one of the top hospitals in the world. And when doctors would come in and out, by their body language, before they said anything, I could tell if it was good news or bad news, because this eye was seeing things that two eyes had not seen. So that's the start of my ability to perceive a little richer and earlier and deeper. So what is that? How do we transfer that into leadership? Well, the one way is to make sure that when we come into a room that we are actually seeing. We're seeing people, we're reading their body language, we're reading their emotion. Some research has said up to 79% of communication is nonverbal, right? Here, my hands, my face,
Yeah.
right? Joy, bored, am I angry or am I serious, right? All these things that we communicate and transfer to our players in the boardroom, executives, to our employees. They read our body language immediately. So to be cognizant of and being aware of what you're emitting non-verbally, number one, is super important, because there's two opportunities in every conversation. You're either giving energy or you're taking energy away. And giving energy doesn't mean to be loud and boisterous. Sometimes that is necessary. you're giving me energy right now by listening intently. So as a leader, being aware of the energy that we give others, and is it the right energy at the right time, and checking yourself on that energy. So that's one little way of being in the moment with other people.
Yeah. No, I love it. I think, I was thinking about the lessons that you've taught in Eyes Up, and was it always so like, and so you've been doing vision training, with, I know you have a history of doing with Len. Was it the same evolution? Like, what did 5 Ps, was that a framework you've done before, or that you refined and it culminated at the time, you released Eyes Up? Because you're right, I find it really fascinating. You're right. Like, I mean, you're talking about some of these things with perception, being one of those things. And I really like how, that the framework you provided, because I'm a big believer. It's a shortcut, mental shortcut for helping to think through something, and like, oh yeah, perceive, you have to have a process, etc. But I'm curious, when did it originate? When did it click for you, that framework?
For the audience, there's 2 pieces here. There's vision training soccer and vision training for life. Vision training for soccer is something that my business partner Len and I have been doing north of 40 years now, since 1981, traveling around the world globally. We license coaches specifically on how to get players to scan to see the field in a methodology on the pitch, on the field. Okay, that's something we've done. I was in China, Senegal, Ukraine. We've been in several continents, impacting and helping deliver that message, and of course, across the U.S. Vision training for life is the leadership component that I've been doing now north of 10 years. This is where Eyes Up, the book, came out of Vision Training for Life. This is where I do workshops and training for C-suite executives, for amateur and pro teams, for high school students here at Bard. I'm the leadership. I do leadership training, assistant director of athletics leadership training, for staff and faculty, and for students. Plus, I'm the men's soccer coach, so that your audience understands the 2 pieces. The 5 Ps, perceive, process, plan, perform, and persist, comes from the soccer part. Because we would teach vision, people ask, what do you mean? Can you explain it to me? Well, I know lookings, like, I came up with it riding a bike along Sandy Hook, New Jersey, around the shore. Like, how can I make this thing clear to coaches instead of taking a half hour? So it's perception, right? Wide, bright, and deep. So if you're on the field as a midfielder anywhere, you're looking around. There's a goal for you, right? So ability to perceive, right? Process, abstract information, perceive, process, plan. Now that you have information, your plan, what's the next step? And then executing and perform. And persist is the habit loop. When you're persistent about something, it becomes automatic. You don't have to think about it. When you're persistent about being perceptive on the field, right? You're constantly looking, taking early looks, not late looks, not waiting for other people to say, Barry, man on, turn, give me the ball, clapping, which is too slow. It's the 3rd slowest way our brain processes information. The fastest way is visual. Light travels 186,000 miles a second. Sound only travels 1,000 feet a second. The second fastest way our brain process information is emotional. When you see somebody angry, happy, sad, if a bear would walk in here, all of a sudden I'd be frightened. That's how our brain processes. So when we train on the field, on the attack specifically, our culture is a verbal culture. We're training players in the 3rd slowest way to process information, not the fastest way. Hence, our decision-making as in the American player is less than the top European players consistently. Our inability to make the right decisions, quick decisions. So that's the football part of it, the soccer part. Same applies in life. The same principles apply in life. So the 5 Ps in life are, again, perception, wide, bright, and deep, perceiving, processing, reading a room. So let's say you're in a room with a bunch of folks and you're looking around. Are you just talking to one person, or are you, as you talk to one person and you step away and you finish are you reading the room? Is it your time to talk? Is it your time to listen? So being aware, super aware, right? Perceive, process, plan, perform, persist, and persistent about being perceptive. What do I mean? We're told in science that when we look at people for safety, right? Fight, flight, right? Or freeze, right? Those are 3 components, right? From our origin, scientists tell us. So when we meet people often, we put them in a very narrow, because of that, we judge right away. So when we judge people, we miss the tapestry and beauty that every human being has. So we have the 5 Ps and the 3 Ls. Look, listen, and learn are the 3 Ls. So if I'm really plugged into you, I'm looking, I'm listening, not to respond, but listening, and I'm learning. And when I do that, and when you do that, you're gathering what? What are you gathering?
Information. Yeah.
Information. And information is everything.
Yeah.
That's why we're on this call. Information is everything. Anyone who's listening to this is gathering information. This is important. So when I gather information, I'm learning. And when I learn, I move forward in life. And I'm also connecting with that human being when I'm listening, I'm connecting. So that's the 5 Ps in vision training for life, and the 3 Ls, how they apply.
I think it's incredible because it's something I know I struggle with a bit. The willingness to ability to collect information. You're right. I always remember thinking from the very first time I met you at a soccer convention years ago. We'd exchange emails. You were gracious enough to fly in for this event to meet me and my dad, Dr. Ralph Tarter, and connect. And I just remember right off that you're right. You're right. You were attuned to what we were talking, to what I was saying, or what others. And I'm curious, what is it that others? Why do so many people struggle, including myself and others, with this ability to gather the information through looking and listening? I think that a lot of that part, that upfront part, and you said, and the 5P of this perception, it's like what's the barrier, what is the holdback that you when you think through it? I know you've talked through it in the book, but how would you describe how? Yeah,
sure. Well, a lot of it's culture, right? Our culture is a product based culture. We are not a process based culture. We're so much about the result. When you meet someone, think about when you played sport or your children play sport. After a game is over, what's the first thing that somebody asks you if you played a game? What do they ask you?
That's not a game. I don't know how you did. How you
that question. How you did in what way? How you what?
If goals you scored? It depends on the position.
What if you won, right?
Oh yeah.
Or you won? Yes or no, right?
Yeah.
How'd you do? How'd it go? Right? How's the game? Nobody asks how you played.
Outcomes.
How was your,
yeah.
Everyone asks you. I never asked that. I asked, how did you perform? That's what I asked. Because the outcome, we can't always control the outcome, but we can control our effort, our performance, right? But everybody is product oriented. So they're already, oh, you won, great. Well, whatever. Now already we have these perceptions, right? Oh, you lost. So right away we have these perceptions. So we're very much, our culture is product oriented, and we make those decisions right away based on that, which is so limited. So that's one part of it, is that let's gather and learn and connect. And connection is a huge word that I use all the time. So I don't use network with someone, for example. People say go to events and conferences and network. Network is transactional. What are you going to do for me? Connect is transformative. What can I do for you? How can I serve you? So we are hardwired culturally, our society, American society, because I've traveled around the world. I was in Senegal for 2 weeks. I did a dozen workshops, was on a ferry for 17 hours, and drove to a village in Bambali with Sadio Mane, the great Senegalese captain who brought some semblance of joy in the Africans Cup. He brought his team out. That guy, I went with a team of Senegalese, and I did a leadership workshop in his village in French, and I don't speak French. And there was villagers from all over that came. I did a leadership workshop and a vision training soccer workshop, and it was beautiful. We connected. My workshops are 2 hours, they're 3 hours, and afterwards they're still sitting there. And I'm like, we're done. And the translator says, well, they want more. I go, more of what? We've been here for 3 hours. Because they are present. Culturally, they're present. Where we are moving on to the next thing, it's hard for our culture to be in the moment. Why? Thanks to Steve Jobs and his invention. We are in the most disconnected society, although we're most so connected. We're disconnected with humanity.
Actually, I was thinking, so in your book, I enjoyed, I'm going through it. So like the first section, first unit, second unit, totally made sense to me. The third that was surprising that I enjoyed, and I was talking about this in our pre-call, when I was looking at your book, I was like, the finding the good in others, it surprised me it was there, but now as you're talking, I'm like, I can see like a part of connection. It feels like maybe seeking connection is when you're attuned to the gifts that others have. And so, talking about your dad and the challenges, I thought it was really fascinating. That kind of surprise. I like being surprised. But it was unexpected. It didn't flow with how I perceived a book would go, because it felt different than just a traditional, here's the skills you need to succeed. Here's the 5 Ps, the 3 Ls. You're going to have that. And it felt, I'm curious if you wouldn't mind, because you're kind of hitting on it with some of it. I know you do blend in the 5 Ps and 3 Ls with the trips you take, but kind of this bigger mission that I'm sure it makes sense. I can see that your mind works in that way. It makes a lot of sense to you. It was surprising to me to see it, and I see it fitting now, but it was just surprising. I'd love to hear a little more on that, like why is good in others? How does that serve the other part of being attuned in conversations and being a successful leader? Why have it included?
Sure. That's great question. You're asking super wonderful questions. Research has showed us that most of our thoughts are negative. Most thoughts are negative. And I need to get that specific data, but I heard that believe the number is about 70% of our thoughts are negative. Okay, human. And the other number I'm pretty sure it's above that. Our thoughts are repeated over and over. So we are hardwired negatively. By that, I mean our self-confidence is impacted, our belief in ourselves is impacted, unless you're a narcissist. I'm not talking about narcissism now at all. I'm talking about healthy human beings. So when you recognize and you think about yourself, the doubts that you have, can I do that? Is this going to work? Is the podcast, how am I going to, is this going to, all these, we have so many questions about what's not going to go right. So when I started gathering that and anecdotally and also through research, I taught sport psych for 20 years before this at LIU Brooklyn. I had high-level athletes. I had 3 future Olympic gold, silver, and bronze medalists in my class. So I had this laboratory of students that were so type A, and we could do things for 20 years, different students, which was really helpful for me to come up with these anecdotal, also science-based information, right? So when I started gathering that information and how, our ability to really rewire our brains, right? Neuroplasticity, we now know it's very common, right? That word was not used 25 years ago, or rarely was used, right? Now, sure, I could change the way I think. The way our brain works, our brain doesn't know the difference. You put good things in, they stick. You put bad things in, it sticks, right? Putting good things in your brain, and you become an attractive human being. So how that works, and it started within the book, my dad, unfortunately, when my dad passed, I was in my late 20s, back to my dad. And at his funeral, the first person I remember comes up to me and says, "Oh, your dad, finally I meet you. Your dad used to speak so highly of you, and I'm sorry that he passed, but he would tell us stories." And the person leaves, I remember thinking, my dad would never do. My dad never told me things that I did well. So I loved him. He did stuff for me and he cared about me, but he never actually told me that he saw good things in me or accomplishments. Literally, Barry, like 30 seconds, another person goes, "Oh, you're TJ. I finally get to meet you." Your dad would have all articles and photos by his desk about me. I'm like, oh my gosh, my dad could tell other people, but he couldn't tell me. And I felt less, like, whoa. So I made a decision at that point that I'm going to seek out the best in others. When I see things that other people are doing well, to help them in their journey. And I don't mean giving a trophy for everyone. I'm not suggesting that, by the way. I'm not talking about participation trophies. I want to be very clear to the audience, but to recognize in humans that what you just said or what you just did is important. I just did that the other day. We had a spring cleaning here on campus last Friday, and there was our janitor in the bathroom, and he was changing the papers. And then I said, "I want to tell you, we talked about you at our staff meeting." He looked at me and goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "How much, since you've been here the last 3 months, how much cleaner our building is, how much better it smells, and how much we appreciate you." That's what I told the guy in the bathroom, right? And he paused, and he was shocked. And he said, "What's your name?" I said, "TJ." He goes, "My name is Miguel. Thank you. I appreciate that." Like little simple things. Every day we have opportunities to share goodness in others. And when we do that, one is we've elevated their confidence. What happens is when someone, one of the most powerful things you can tell someone is, "I believe in you. I see good in you," is one of the most powerful words we could say to move people forward and to connect with people. And now that connection gets you to perform at your higher level. So hopefully that was a long story. And
that does. That makes a lot of sense. Well, do you have time for one more question?
Yes.
Okay. I'm curious. This might be a bit philosophical. I'm curious. And you were talking about, and he brought up, he said, not the type of connection, not like being on like whether devices, whether people are connected, so they're LinkedIn connected or Instagram or they're on. And I was thinking about the societal downward spiral of that type of connection, the technological replacement of and I'm curious, I was thinking of the future, because I could see where your program is such an uplifting, where vision training for leadership and life is powerful. And it's got this, I don't know if you'd call it a nemesis, but the the digital, people attached to their devices and ruled by. And I'm curious, how you feel the battle of good versus evil is going, and how, like the future of your program to overcome. And I said, I'm not anti, I love technology, so I'm not anti-technology, but yes, how do we leverage the skill and make sure we're not just diluting? And so, yeah, I know I've given you kind of a mouthful of thoughts or a handful of ideas, but I'm curious how you view that, like the mission you're on versus, well, how society is just feels it's on this pathway in a different direction at some level. How do you think about that, and how you update your program, or et cetera? How do you think about it?
What I've come to discover, and it's completely non-intentional, is that what Eyes Up and the leadership, life and leadership training is now has become a missing link in our society. A link that is disappearing and diminishing is what you're saying. It's super clear. And my feeling and my belief, and I define myself as an idealist sprinkled with a little realism, I traveled to Ukraine last year in June and July, and I did workshops in June, Senegal was in July. I'll be back in Ukraine again in June and August, twice this year. And I did workshops with soldiers that were coming from the front line and transitioning into civilian life. Talk about happy people. Talk about people with a mission, with a purpose, trying to find their way while they're being invaded in a war it's incredibly sad. Talk about being in Africa, where they have very little in terms of devices there, but how much joy the people have there. For me, when I went to those places, it reminded me that humanity, we as humans, we have more connection than disconnection. That's what I discovered. And I firmly believe that we need to make sure that we discipline each other to do the right things. Everything in our lives, successful people, the most confident people are disciplined people, right? We know that. That's one of the most common threads, is those that have the most confidence in themselves are the most successful. That's my 10 leadership qualities. I talk about that in Eyes Up, is being confident. So when you are confident and you realize the power you have to bring about change in others, and recognizing that the human connection is the most powerful connection, I feel and believe we're going to do more of that. And we just need to continue to replicate that and have that ripple effect. I use the word ripple effect a lot in Eyes Up. And our conversation here is going to change lives. It might change one life, but that life that we're going to change, that someone's going to come away with this, with their son, their daughter, their employees in their company, their spouse, it's going to have the ripple effect. And that's what I'm feeling. That's what I'm hearing. And when I do my workshops they're interactive, by the way, feeling going away is what you're sharing with me from our experiences and from reading Eyes Up. I have a 10-year-old boy, ready, in Oregon that listens to my audiobook is in my voice. The dad told me every night, this 10-year-old boy listens to Eyes Up for about 20 minutes before he goes to bed, a 10-year-old boy. I'm like, what? How incredible is that? If there's a 10-year-old boy that's gathering the messages that you and I are gathering,
Yeah.
How about how he's going to change the world, that boy, and make our world a better place, Barry?
That is really incredible. And I know I've loved, as I enjoy your book. I've read it twice. I skim parts frequently because I'm like, I think like you said, the different sections have different, it's like interesting perspectives that will help. And that is really impressive with a 10-year-old, that you're saying youth. And I love that term you brought up with, with ripple effect. I was thinking about, I know there's some people use that, like where there's I don't want to say paying it forward, but like, and you're expanding, you're amplifying. And I can, want to thank you so much for your time today. I loved hearing your perspectives on life, leadership, how, I hope the audience will take away that the Eyes Up skills and mentality can have not just a positive impact on themselves, but this ripple effect of people around them. Grateful for your time, TJ, and the work you're doing. Thank you so much.
Barry, thank you for having me on. For your audience, what I want to suggest for you and challenge you is to begin living, if you haven't done so already, each day with your eyes up and your heart open, and see the people that you encounter every day in your life. And as you do that, you'll build meaningful connections and you'll help make our world a better place, one person at a time. I appreciate you having me on the show and all that you're doing, all the good that you're doing. And I look forward to reconnecting with you in the future as well.
Perfect. Thank you. And just for everyone else, so to whether you want to get a copy or want to book TJ for to come talk to your group, whether it's company, team, an organization, visit, I'd recommend going to tjkostecky.com. We'll put it in our show notes. And I want to thank you again, TJ, for all the time you've spent talking to me and helping me be a better leader myself. So thank you again.
I appreciate you. Also, there's a TED Talk that I did. So those that are listen to TED Talks, if you put in my name, TJ Kostecky, the TED Talk topic is building bridges by living each day with your eyes up and your heart open. Building bridges by living with your eyes up and your heart open. If you Google TEDx TJ Kostecky, you'll also hear that.
Oh, perfect. Oh yeah, I enjoyed that one too. Yeah, I forgot. Yes, you did. That was a couple 2 years ago, I think you did that. That's
A year ago.
Yeah,
Almost a year.
almost a year. Okay, loved it. Awesome. Well, thank you again, and appreciate it, audience, for tuning in.
Thank you.